Hey friends, it is your weird creative makeup artist pal Cat Sketch to bring you guys a brand new makeup transformation video. There is a new Scream movie coming out, so in honor of it, I wanted to do a creepy take on the original Scream mask. I found this art piece by Lee Howard Art. I hope that's the original creator, but this is so haunting and mesmerizing. It's the Scream mask bursting open to reveal a skull. Now, the original skull Scream mask was actually inside of a creepy teddy bear doll that was sold on eBay, and it was revealed on like Scream fan pages. And I really want to recreate this look while telling some spooky stories, of course. I scoured Reddit for some of the most creepiest, oldest, most liked scary stories. So let's tell some spooky stories while turning into this creepy Scream mask. Let's get started. This first story is from Sammy B 1981. When I was a kid, it was the first time I was staying home alone while my whole family was out at my brother's ball game. I was around 13 years old, I think. Anyways, I'm on the phone with a friend of mine, feeling so grown up when someone beeps in on the other line. I tell her, "I'll be right back." And I click over lines. Then the creepiest voice I have ever heard says, "Hello, little girl. I'm the man in your basement." Honestly, I laughed it off, and I just hung up thinking it was a prank call. I was a pretty confident little thing, and my neighborhood was pretty safe, so I figured someone was just messing with me. Knowing it was my first time alone, they beeped in again, so I clicked over and heard, "Don't you hang up on me, you little bitch." And the lights started flickering, and there was a banging under my feet. I know it sounds crazy, but my dog started freaking out and my cat ran away. So I assure you it wasn't my imagination. Our basement was actually just an area connected to the garage. It wasn't finished. I heard what sounded like footsteps coming up the garage steps to get into our kitchen, and I threw stuff in front of the door and heard yelling and whatnot. I kept trying to hang up and called the cops, but every time I tried to, he was still on the phone. My friend told her parents what was happening, and they ran to the neighbor's house to call the police for me. I sat there petrified with a broken rifle, a butcher's knife, and a baseball bat behind my front door because it's the only place in the house downstairs that couldn't be seen from a window, and I was crying. Eventually, I clicked over to hear a police dispatcher on the phone, and I stayed on the line with her until the police got to my house. There was no sign of forced entry, though we had a broken window pane on our outside garage door that had been messed up for months prior to this, and my guess is that he used that to get in. The police assumed I was just a paranoid girl, and they were going to leave me home alone after they gave me an all clear. Fortunately, a family friend had been driving by and saw the cops there, and he stopped by to see if everything was okay. He gave me a ride to school where my family was. They were skeptical that something had happened, but we did get a security system not too much longer after that, and my parents both got cell phones too. This was in 1994, so I think cell phones weren't that popular yet. After this happened, I swear there was someone stalking me for years. I would leave my apartment locked and bolted, and I would come back to find appliances on, like my hairdryer or my stove. My heat on was in the middle of the summer. I lived in 4 different places and would get strange phone calls at every one of them, despite being unlisted. Cars would randomly be parked down the road from a house and speed up and slam on the brakes as I would run inside. I'd hear loud bangs outside when I lived out in the country. Nothing has happened since I've been in my current house and married, but I'm still super paranoid all of the time. This next post is from Poseidon. My parents were drug addicts when I was younger. We had a nice home, but slowly as I matured, we started living in crummier homes. When I was a teenager, we rented a decent sized home, but it was run down in a weird neighborhood. On moving day, we set out exploring, excited to see that the unfinished basement at least had a semi-furnished laundry room. Underneath the stairs in the laundry room, there were some childlike drawings on the walls. A picture of a family of 5 members, including a baby, with the caption, "Our New Home." It was honestly a little weird, but whatever kids draw in random places, we just covered up the art and used the laundry room. That basement was super creepy though. There was always a feeling of something watching you. All of us experienced some kind of weird thing in this house. Now, I believe in ghosts because of an earlier experience I've had in a much older house, but I still remain skeptical. Everyone who stayed with us or visited us reported hearing a voice of a little boy behind them at random times during the day. It was always the same thing, roar, the noise that little kids always make when they're trying to scare you. We all kind of ignored it, dismissed it, or just lived with it. One day I was home alone and sitting on the computer doing my online classwork when I started to hear this weird buzzing noise. I ignored it for a while, but it just kept going, this steady buzzing noise. No one was home, even my dog was gone. I waited until my dad came home from work and fell asleep on the couch, and then decided to investigate. By then, the noise had been going on for about 2 hours. I eventually followed the noise downstairs and saw my dad's electric hair clippers turned on, and they were just buzzing all over by themselves on our bathroom floor. I was really confused as to how this even happened. I turned the clippers off and heard an impatient sigh come from the other side of the basement. Not thinking, I just said, "Sorry," and just noped out of there. I got back upstairs and woke up my dad and told him he left his clippers on, hoping for an explanation from him. He then told me he lost his clippers weeks ago, and he told me to go get them from the basement. The last thing that happened was something that really cemented the fact that there's something weird in that house, in the minds of our whole family. My mother, brother, sister, and I were all getting ready to leave the house. We had the keys in our hands, shoes on, and all of us were walking towards the door. My brother stops at the fridge and says to us, "I'm going to take the last Pepsi, okay?" All of us heard from the basement a distinct childlike voice say, a voice around like the sound of a 4 or 5-year-old boy shout, "No!" in direct response to this statement. It was so clear that it was that bratty toddler no that so many parents are familiar with. We all solemnly looked at each other, confirmed in each other's eyes what we just heard, and we hurried to the car as naturally as we possibly could. That is probably the only house I was happy to hear we got evicted from. This next post is from a writer named Ugra. When I was in high school, and I'm nearly 40 years old now, my parents bought a good-sized house for what they paid for. They were aware this house had a history, but none of us in our family were superstitious, so we bought it. The history of this house was that a man killed himself there. The people who lived there in the early 80s had rented the basement of the house to their friend. His wife left him, and I guess the divorce was messy. He didn't die in the house, but in the driveway. He ran a hose from his exhaust into the window of his car. His parents lived in the house for over 10 years. We always joked about the place being haunted. The basement in particular just had a creepy feeling to it. I never got that whole, "it feels like you're being watched" feeling before then, and I haven't since, but you just got that feeling there. There was always small things going on, creaking floors, breezes, and crap like that. Most were dismissible, you know? But here's the one story that stands out. My mother was reading a book in the living room late at night. Sometimes she had trouble sleeping and was going to read until she got really tired. That night she was sitting there and heard a metal noise like a ting. Then the clack, clack, clack of something hitting the floor. She turned around to see the final skid of a fork as it came to a stop beside her. 3 forks were sitting on a table across the room. She said it sounded like someone had hit the tongs and sent it flying across the room. Everyone else in the house was asleep at this time. Well, after my sister and I moved out, my sister had a child. My parents bought an automated swing for the baby for when the baby was visiting. But this swing would randomly swing on its own. The swing would be turned off. It would just be like someone had lightly pushed it. It happened enough that my parents would just kind of mention it lightly when it happened. They just say, "Oh, hey, look, the swing is moving again," and go about their day. One night I was staying over at my parents' watching TV. It was about 2 a.m. and I heard a tap, tap, tap. It was coming from the fireplace. The swing was about 7 feet away from there for reference. The tapping was deliberating sounding, like a person or animal had done it. I shrugged it off and kept watching. 5 minutes later, I hear tap, tap, tap. I'm intrigued now. I go to the fireplace expecting a trapped bird or something, but nothing and no tapping sounds. I turn to sit down, and once I pass the swing, tap, tap, tap. I have a better hearing vantage now, and it sounded like something was tapping on the mantle. I walk up to it, and when I get to it, tap, tap, tap. Loud this time. Nothing was there that I could have seen that caused it. And the hair on my arm starts to stand on edge. I'm kind of spooked, turn around, go outside for a smoke. This was before I quit. Then tap, tap this time instead of a third tap. The swing swung forward like someone pushed it with full force. I had a couple cigarettes standing outside instead of just one. Last story, but back when I was out of school, before moving out, and it was late, I was in the hallway when I heard my father yell, "What the f***?" I asked through the door if everything is okay. He exits the room, and he is white as a sheet. He said he woke up and saw 2 old ladies standing at the foot of his bed. They were just staring at him and mouthing something, like talking to him. He said there was no expression on their faces, neither happy, sad, or scared, and they had no sound. But when he yelled, they disappeared. This next story is by Gibson Tunn. My friend was in her 2nd year of college away from home, living in a 1-bedroom apartment by herself. Living alone, she was always super conscious of locking her doors and everything else. She comes back from class one day and notices that her stuff was not how she left it. Clothes on the floor, papers were rustled, etc. And there was a picture on her floor of a little black boy whom she had never seen before. Enough was out of place that she was way weirded out and she called the police. The police came to investigate, but they can't find any evidence of breaking and entering. And they asked if they can take her computer. They take it, she's freaked out, but she tries not to worry about it. The next day, the police show up, bringing her the computer and tell her that they found something on it. They open her Microsoft Word and find hundreds of letters to her. They were really weird love letters talking about her. Every single one ended the same way. "If you don't believe me, just look under your bed." No joke, the police looked under her bed, lifted up the mattress to find hundreds of used condoms. Needless to say, my friend noped right out of there and moved back home the next day. And they never found out who it was. They assumed it was someone working maintenance, considering the doors were always locked and she came home to them locked when this incident occurred. And that is some of the terrifying stories that I found on Reddit while turning into this super creepy version of the Scream mask with the piercing skull right through the middle of it and some fake blood. I hope you guys enjoyed this makeup look and this video. Stay tuned because I post every Friday. I have so much fun creating these for you all, and I hope you stick around. I'm also on TikTok and Instagram. So I hope to see you around, and I will see you in the next video. Love y'all. Bye.